All right, welcome. Hello, I'm Alfredo Maikiu with ReEngine Consulting, and today I'd love to show you about how to take a interference diagram, how to build it, and then hatch a goal tree right from that live with your participants right there in the room. So I call it the Golden Goose, using your client's own interference diagram to hatch a goal tree. A few things about interference diagramming. So first of all, you'll gain an appreciation today of the amount of stakeholder engagement and activity and really passion that's involved when you produce a goal tree with your team. And then also the ability to pull a tremendous amount of qualitative data. So it can really complement the quantitative data that you might have access to. But really, the in-depth understanding of an organization is something that can be yielded through an interference diagramming session. And it takes, often it's within an hour. You will know, even as somebody who had just walked in to the organization as a consultant or facilitator, you'll know more about the challenges to that organization than the CEO. And senior leaders in the organization. And what we found is that they're often shocked at such a short time to learn so much about their very own organization as an outsider. Furthermore, it'll be documented and ready to use. And as you'll see today, we can take it and flip it, twist it and pivot and flip it into an actual goal tree that can be utilized for strategic purposes within the organization. And it's also is a wonderful way to solicit all of the solution ideas that may be bubbling around the organization, that may have been conceived of, but maybe not shared. And it's a wonderful way to invite all of those different ideas in a way that they're immediately understood and welcomed by the rest of the participants in the interference diagramming session. So some origins about it. No doubt you can see the elements of the thinking tools and the influences of Ellie Goldratt within the actual tool themselves. You'll see it uses sufficiency-based logic. You'll see that you've got the arrows of the cause and effect. But perhaps the most we see it in Bob Spruill's with another L, Bob Spruill and Bruce Nelson's Epiphanized chapter 8. They draw out and actually have an interference diagram there and discuss it within that novel. It was introduced to me by Baha Inozu from Novasis. I noticed that, for example, Yuji Kashira used it in his book, the transformation, transformation management through by Harmony. And I know many others use it as well as a wonderful facilitation tool. Now, today, there's going to be 4 parts. We'll have an interference diagramming discussion, and actually, like step by step, we'll go through. So even if you've never heard of the word interference diagramming, you're going to know by the end of this how to accomplish an interference diagram with the team. Then we're going to talk about the twist, how we can pivot to start developing a goal tree live, right with your participants in a very seamless way. And then we'll go through the actual building of a goal tree, how that is utilized, how that is constructed, and the utility of it. And then finally, we'll talk a little bit about flipping the meeting and some of the tools that ReEngine Consulting has made and has available for everyone on YouTube, available to be able to flip the meeting to set the conditions for a successful interference diagram session, and then a subsequent building of your goal tree with the team. So we can see from Epiphanized by Bob Spruill and Bruce Nelson, this is a quote from the book, that interference diagram is a thinking tool that offers the ability to define those interferences or obstacles that block or hinder your ability to achieve a specific goal or outcome. So a great succinct definition about how an interference diagram can help you reach that goal, to achieve that specific goal or outcome that you and the participants are looking for. And you can see this is significantly connected to the theme of this conference. So interference diagram, here's like the construct just to set it up in the beginning, where you put the goal in the middle and all of the challenges, all of the interferences, all of the obstacles around, and you run through 5 steps, logical steps that take the team through the exercise. We'll go through each one of those in particular. But first, I want to invite Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, his quote. He's a scientist, like Ellie Goldratt. He loved to bring insight through the scientific method of his studying of plants, studying of colors and the visible spectrum, and an amazing contributor to the Enlightenment. He says things which matter most must never be at the mercy of things which matter least. And it's with that spirit that we delve into interference diagramming, where we find all too often those challenges and obstacles. Often the things that matter least are challenging the goal, the thing that matters most. So let's go step by step. So first, you assemble the group. Often a question is, who should participate? So if you're not already a designated project team or project group, then what I recommend is that you choose a cross-section of the organization, right? And include the naysayers and the yes buts. They many times have what I would call change X-ray vision. They can see the obstacles that we optimists cannot, but nonetheless, we're gonna stumble over as we move toward the change. And so it's good to have them in the room to be able to share that. When I was asking Steve Cuthbert, who's chief of staff for Kristen Cox in Utah, I was asking him because he was a few years ahead of the Texas effort and the adoption of TOC and theories of constraint. I asked him, what would you do differently if you were starting out like we are in Texas? How would you have learned from what you experienced here in Utah? And he said, overwhelmingly, what I would do different is I would not focus mostly on the optimists and the can-do people who were trying to adopt change within the organization. I would focus and invite in also those folks that had a healthy skepticism, that were circumspect about the new improvement flavor of the day, and invite them in the room too, because they could see things that we could not. And when they identified those obstacles, then we could deal with those negative branches, trim them, and then be successful in an overwhelming way without any setbacks, because we were able to predict those challenges. And about 5 to 15. In other words, not too small a group where you don't have enough perspective from the organization. It's not rich enough. And 15, after 15, it more or less becomes overwhelming, especially for the facilitator, and a lot of good ideas go uncaptured because it's such a challenge to the facilitator. It also keeps it, you'll see, there's a personal rapport that starts to develop among the participants, and sometimes if they're more than 15, some folks may be reluctant to share their perspective, but in the smaller group of 15 or less, that folks often are. Then we put the goal right there in the center of the whiteboard, or the center of whatever board, the center of the computer now, here in the middle of the pandemic. And we put the goal as the organization would like to describe the goal, like what they want to be able to achieve. It could be the goal of a sub-process, right? Like paying our bills on time so that there's no interest penalty. And there could be also, it could be a blue light focus. And I see interference diagramming used very effectively by teams that, for example, want to be interrupted less within the workspace. Or they have a lot of challenges of resource contention, right? Where the main resource that's being pulled back and forth between different groups or different teams is multitasking all the time and can't concentrate in any single location because they're being hauled back and forth. What the Phoenix Project named Brent was the individual in the Phoenix Project who was that resource pulled back and forth. So if we want to reduce that, that can also be used. Interference diagramming can be used there as well. Okay, now step 3 is you want to identify all the obstacles to the goal, and you reach up and grab those and put them all around the goal, usually with arrows pointing in, demonstrating that they're interfering with the success of the goal. And try not to judge them. Try to bring them all in. Let folks just go ahead and sometimes it feels like they're venting their spleen. But it is cathartic, but be ready a little bit for the emotion of it. You know, as you probably know, I work a lot with governments, and public servants are very passionate about the work that they do. And a lot of times there's long-standing challenges to them trying to accomplish their mission in an effective and efficient manner. And a lot of those motions will come out when you start to capture those interferences. So be ready for that. The other thing is within this trajectory of an interference diagram, it's also the nadir. It's also the low point, because everyone gains this vivid recognition of the challenges that lay in the path of their goal achievement. So it is often very tough. I would call it heavy. So it's a cathartic but heavy experience. But don't worry, because now you're going to start to lift them up very soon after you capture that. Because now what you'll do is within the session, you'll hand out stickies and markers. So I encourage, when they're coming up with the challenges, that goes through the facilitator and you place that up onto the whiteboard. But then the stickies and markers then can be captured, and they can start writing down their solutions to those obstacles that they previously named and that the facilitator had written down on the whiteboard. And it's great for them to write it large enough with a marker that's visible from where they're sitting, so that they can see and post those. And then sometimes it's hard to keep up as the facilitator, as you race around, gather up those stickies, and then start to post them on the obstacle, right? So those are the ideas, the solutions, the creative notions, the injections that they have to be able to overcome that specific challenge that is in the way between them and goal achievement, right? And so you're inviting the solutions from everyone, right? And there's a couple of rules for this fun, and it is fun, and it is exciting, and it's a very powerful, optimistic feel that starts to fill the room. One is that everyone, that if you're in the room, come up with an idea to be able to work with at least one obstacle. And you'll see some folks are going to be very thoughtful, and they won't offer their solutions right away, but they'll pause and they'll thoughtfully fill out the stickum and then hand it to you. And you have to be alert, because some of them won't hand it; they'll wait till you come and pick it up. And other folks will be bursting at the seams with ideas that they've always had, but perhaps have never been heard. And then we try not to have any feasibility tests at that time, right? Let's not judge whether or not it's effective or not, or whether there's too many obstacles to put that solution into place. We can let pigs fly. So James Holt would talk about letting pigs fly and letting the ideas just run around the room without being dampened. I remember in class and with Professor Holt when he was telling about an individual who worked in the delivery service with like UPS and Federal Express, and he was talking about how to deliver packages with very high speed and a high reliability, even in highly congested areas. And one of the things happened in class where one of the students came up with delivering it by drone. And the rest of the students, there was a bit of ridicule in the class. Again, this was over a decade ago. And the student felt very bad and withdrew. And Professor Holt chided the rest of the class and told them to let the pigs fly. And here we are today, where that has become a reality and is being invested in as the solution to be able to deliver packages. So don't restrict any ideas. Every obstacle needs at least one solution. So as part of these rules for the fund is to make sure that none of the obstacles go on unattended by solutions, and that might take a little focus from the facilitator as you take a closer look at an obstacle and start to invite ideas and pull ideas from the rest of the team. And again, you get this great palpable sense of can-do, of optimism, of moving forward. All for one and one for all is sort of the idea, the moniker there that happens when you are doing one of these sessions. And folks always emerge in a very positive mood about what they can do. So taking another look here at the interference diagramming, you can see that there's the blue light or the value or the goal that's there. Blue light meaning what are those high yield activities that really move us toward our goal, really move us toward producing value for the customer. And then you can see all the challenges around it as we go through the 5 steps to eventually capture those solutions and ideas and creative, some of it can be conjecture, some of it's unrestricted as those pigs fly out and we post them to the board as different ideas that we have. Then we ask ourselves, okay, so as a team now, a group of participants, what are we resolved to do in the organization? Let's say that we can do what we want to do here. What can we do? How do we focus on solution adopting? What is the low-hanging fruit that's there, especially that has high ROI, right? Especially that might be connected in some way to have a positive impact on the constraint, where we know the whole system will benefit if we can just improve this one critical activity in the flow, in the chain of value that we have. And ask ourselves, what can we do now? What can we do now? I remember that Kevin Fox asked the group in my very first improvement session with Kevin Fox of Viable Vision. And he said, look, I understand that there are a lot of ideas of what we want to tell the executive director to do, or the legislature, right? Or our commissioners, or we want IT to do all these things for us. I got that. And no doubt a lot of those ideas are valid and can do it. But what can we do now? What can we implement now in order to be able to reach closer to the goal and navigate around or through some of these obstacles that we've identified? And then also to look at control versus influence. Just because we don't necessarily have control of something doesn't mean that we cannot positively influence it, or we can't measure it, or we can't portray it, or we can't come up with important messaging that we can communicate over time to be able to influence that challenge that we may have. So those are some of the important considerations as we pluck that low-hanging fruit and ask what the team is resolved to do. And as we do so, we need to remember what Ellie Goldratt said about complex systems, which I always find refreshing, because sometimes in government we're overwhelmed by the bureaucracy, we're overwhelmed by the complexity, we're overwhelmed by the system that seems to drag us down, and that we have this conviction that we won't be able to affect change because of this monolith bureaucracy that we face. And that is, the more complex a system is, the more profound is its inherent simplicity, which tells me that if there's a lever or an improvement driver that we can reach and pull, that will have the benefit of leverage, right? And we'll be able to put it at a single point and get a great amount of benefit in a complex organization. In fact, I would even venture to say that the more complex an organization is, the fewer these type of levers are, and the easier it is to identify and then start to pull all in the right direction to get the movement towards positive change. So here you can see an interference diagram, right? You can see and start to appreciate what has happened. So we started with the goal here. In this particular case, this is an Office of Management and Budget. Their goal was to meet agency needs that they supported across the state with timely and compliant procurement, right? Timely and compliant procurement. And then you can see all of the challenges here that the facilitator has captured, right? We have unrealistic expectations of our customers, especially in terms of time. We have competing priorities, and customers tend to expedite things, which causes more friction and delay. There's poor fiscal planning, which ends up that we buy everything in haste, right? There's like a general rule of thumb in government that says, if we spend money in a hurry, we don't spend it well. Here we have wasted time on unnecessary drama and unnecessary conflict, right? And etc. Those are more, all of those are challenges that they saw to the organization. And then they came up with all of the ideas here, right, that they had written down. Educate our clients about the processes, right? We have, we utilize a journey board or Kanban board so that we can see where the competing priorities are, right? Those are all of the different ideas that the team has come up with, and we post those wherever they seem appropriate on the interference diagram. Now, here's what it looks like after you capture it. Don't expect anybody to be able to read any of that, but you can see how you can process that for the team to make it into a usable and intelligible sort of document from all of the handwriting and scribbles that you saw before. And it becomes an important historical record, not just for the immediate improvements and the change that we're pursuing, but also over time for the organization to come back to, because it's a very dense and fruitful exercise that captures a lot of the frictions and frustrations within the organization that probably won't all be addressed in short order and need to be returned to in the process of continuous and ongoing improvement. Now that that's done, it's time to twist and pivot to a goal tree. So I chose here Chubby Checker and the song The Twist, which actually was the biggest blockbuster that came out of the 60s and was from 1960. But it was a song that crossed generations, a song and a dance that was actually a world craze as well. And it also crossed across racial ties. And so it's, I just use the word twist because here the facilitator twists from one board work, which is the interference diagram, to convert that into a second type of board work with the team, which is the goal tree. And so we encountered this. David Johnson was the one who realized that there was a lot of parallels in the interference diagram with the goal tree itself, and that you could utilize the high yield interference diagram and this great qualitative data to create a goal tree. And here is how we did it. So we took a major interference or an obstacle and we flipped it to become a critical success factor. In other words, what we said is, well, this is preventing us from achieving our goal. If we're able to somehow turn it into a critical success factor, then we'll demonstrate that we will be able to achieve our goal. We can turn it into an actual strength. So, for example, if we're challenged because we have too many vacancies and our folks are having to be moved from one job to the next because of folks that are leaving, high turnover rate, et cetera, then we can turn that into a critical success factor of, if we reduce turnover and the impact of the turnover on our folks, we can concentrate on our work, we can conquer the demand that's placed upon us, and we can be able to achieve our goals. Okay, let's take another example. If the challenge that's identified by the team is that, look, quality reviews are great, but it takes up too much of our time, and we can't meet our production goals because we are spending too much time trying to make sure all of the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. Let's say that they say that that's a challenge. Well, we can turn that into a critical success factor of having efficient and effective quality assurance and quality control. Should be QA/QC. And so there, with good quality assurance and quality control that's efficient and effective, we'll be able to be focused on our primary tasks of value production to accomplish our mission, but we'll be able to ensure that what we're doing is quality. Okay, so you can see how those obstacles are great indicators of what can become a critical success factor. Then we take the solutions, those stick'ems that everyone was so excited about as they put on the board. Those solution ideas become necessary conditions, right? That support those critical success factors, make them happen so that we can achieve our goal. Let's take some examples. So here, for reduced turnover and impact, we can see that cross-training and recruiting and hiring temps are ways to be able to reduce that turnover and the impact of that turnover. Those are a few of the ideas that the team came up with. And now those become necessary conditions on our goal tree to be able to achieve that critical success factor. Okay, then let's take a look at efficient and effective QA/QC. We have sampling, checklists, and peer review. Those are elements that can help our quality control process become efficient and become effective. Right? So those would support and in order to achieve quality reviews. Okay, so here is we have here an example of an actual live constructed right there in the room, in the participants. There might have been a 10-minute break when we took and created some of these critical success factors, but it was largely invisible to the participants. So those critical success factors we see here placed across the top, right, lifted straight from the interference diagram. And then you can see here below, you can see all of the different ideas that were associated with that critical success factor. And they began to group together, okay? Also, you know, we as part of the goal in that development, we determined what good looks like at the constraint. And we began to get a deep appreciation of measuring what matters. Now, this was with a incarceration, a prison system. And so they were concerned with the offenders being able to be employed within the system, certifications, GEDs, education to lower recidivism, and providing positive feedback to the line staff, and the positive impact of our whole system there. So you can see why this work with government is so rewarding, and it's so important for the society that we serve. So this is what starts to emerge, is this goal tree, where you're pulling over the critical success factors and then pulling over those necessary conditions and associating them with the critical success factors. Along the way also, we start to see that some of these ideas are very, can apply to several critical success factors. In other words, one or two ideas can start to impact more than one critical success factor. And sometimes there's a push and a pull. No, put it over here. No, put it over there, because it would be effective there too. And that's an indication of something that we may want to key on, then maybe high return on investment in terms of that. And especially if it can be done in short order, it could be a real path to overcoming and breaking a constraint in the organization. So something to pay attention to. Okay, so now you can see sort of in this overview here that we have the goal and we have the critical success factors that lay out as part of this goal tree. And then you have the necessary conditions that are there. And we can see what that looks like here on this brief sketch. Goal, critical success factors, and then of course the necessary conditions. Notice that in this case, we had some sufficiency-based logic. We had the banana demonstrating that in order to get the necessary condition on the left, we had to have two factors to be both necessary and sufficient in order to be able to affect the change. And like any thinking process that William Detmer or Lisa Scheinkoff would say, you have to have sufficiency-based logic, and the goal tree subscribes to that. And it's good to run through it with your folks from bottom to top, because just because somebody didn't come up with that challenge, or maybe there's something else that's absolutely critical that didn't come out during the interference diagramming, but when you run through using sufficiency-based logic and saying, if we accomplish this, or we do this, are we going to have this effect? Is that critical success factor going to be achieved? And you ask the team that, they'll help you fill in the gaps. And then you can just create stickums along the way and to be able to create that goal tree. And by this time in the process, they're signed up. They are part and excited about what they're seeing. It's their ideas. It's their injections. It's their concepts that are being deployed in order to achieve what they always wanted to, which is a profound and robust accomplishment of their mission. And it's within sight now, right? So the tool, both the interference diagramming and the goal tree, becomes invisible to them. They only see it as a vehicle to get to where they want to go. And there's something wondrous about that, and about seeing that excitement within the group. But the CLRs still apply, right? So the categories of limited reservations, of legitimate reservations, really apply. And so you have to make sure that things have the necessity, that are both sufficient and needed to achieve the goal, but keep it light and simple, right? Sometimes the categories of legitimate reservations can start to bear down, and they'll apply that logic on their own. At least that's what we found in the realm of government, is that they'll start to figure it out. Once they see the prize, they'll start to be able to navigate effectively to get there. And if there are challenges, you can always turn to the other thinking tools of future reality tree, current reality trees. Those are always available to help them navigate, to identify those negative paths and those negative branches, and then trim as well. And I'm just pointing out here that this twist, this pivot, from interference diagram to the goal tree is the brainchild of David Johnson. He's a Jonah and a co-founder of ReEngine Consulting. And it's great to see him work with teams to be able to develop a goal tree from the interference diagram. Here's one example. So this is the Department of Corrections and their strategic path for a state. So this is the group that runs all of it's about 8 major institutions to include juvenile justice and parole, and of course the actual prison institution systems. And then you can see here, we were focused on metrics, metrics that measured what mattered, metrics that were not overburdening, that complemented the mission, that brought our attention to the right things timely, and the metrics conveyed our priorities and served as an information bank for further research, analysis, recidivism reduction, etc. And then you can see here the major elements here: leadership reinforces mission and values as a critical success factor, alignment on what matters in the organization, confidence in the data and its conclusions. Everyone has ownership of their role in the mission. We can see the embracing the concepts of dashboards within the organization at their level, and then partners in their role and their mission. And then finally, the metrics enable the timeline and effective decisions at all levels. So we're getting the right information to the right level of leadership, and not too much information to the high levels of leadership to make decisions that are important for the organization. So here's just another example of a table. And in this case, some folks are more comfortable with a table, especially as a way to capture it, in some of these more visual products. But you can see here on the left, you have the obstacles and the interferences, and you would want to flip those to that so that they can become critical success factors. Then you have the raw solutions, the ideas, the injections that came from the team. And then we convert those into necessary conditions. And especially as we start to think about what we're resolved to do, we start to use the language that says that we will write and use SOPs, that we will write and share best practices. We will use sampling, right? And we see these active verbs start to be utilized by the team as they get ownership of that goal tree and get ready to utilize and deploy it. Here we can see another example. This one is in the field of education. And this one is for Head Start. So this is preschool, before kindergarten. But the whole objective there, according to the federal and local programs, is to ensure that the children are ready for kindergarten, are school ready for kindergarten. And again, that is the goal which the organization exists to achieve. And then they identified 4 major critical success factors, 4 major pillars or highways to achieve the goal, right? Where we have alignment and measurement. We are fiscally solid. Our planning and our expenditures support our program direction and achievement. And our core, which we're going to return back to, is the quality educational service delivery, where in these 5 domains of necessary conditions, we can achieve school readiness. And then we have effective management and program alignment, right? Not taking away from the knowledge that we have to have effective leadership, we have to have effective management in order for this program to be successful. And so these are the high-level objectives, the critical success factors that must be satisfied to achieve our goal. Then we have here underneath, our children meet expectations in cognition and general knowledge. So that's one of 5 major elements, right, that we have from the educational field. The other ones are approaches to learning, language and literacy, emotional development, and physical well-being and motor development. within the educational world. And here you can see that this one they chose to focus on, probably that they recognize that as the constraint in terms of the instructors and the teachers' delivery and ability to be able to conquer the challenges associated with that. And so they wanted to make sure that those necessary conditions for this necessary condition is set to be able to achieve that quality education delivery, right? And we can see all of those down here that are associated with that to be able to create that that are both necessary and sufficient so that our children have the cognition and general knowledge in order to be school ready. So this is again another example of a goal tree utilized within a complex system. Nothing more complex and challenging than our educational system in order to be able to routinely and robustly achieve their goal. Okay, here is another way, which I call flip the meeting room. Okay, so in this, what we have is to be able to leverage a concept that we get from education. So if you have children of school age, or if you're in touch with education, you may have heard the phrase flipping the classroom. Now, flipping the classroom can mean a variety of things, but essentially what it means is that the lecture or the instruction is received in a asynchronous manner, and then the actual work to apply it, the cognitive application, the critical learning, and the critical thinking tasks are done within the classroom under the participation and watchful eye and facilitation of the instructor, of the teacher. So for example, if we're doing working on a math problem, we may hear the background and see some problems that are delivered by the teacher on a whiteboard in a lecture type format. They may be asked to read something, again asynchronous, happens at the student's pace, happens on the student's time, and then when they go into the actual classroom, then they'll actually do problems there, not necessarily for grade, but they'll do not just to test, but to actually learn, so that they can ask questions, so that they can apply those concepts that they became initially familiar with the day before. So that there's a pre-teach that happens before the student enters into the classroom, and then they arrive engaged and ready to work with these concepts and begin to build their full adaptive and integrated understanding of that, and then demonstrate it in the classroom, right? So it really builds what I call a brain Velcro when you are able to flip the classroom. So we've taken that concept, very effective concept in education and changing the landscape of education today. And we've taken that concept and now we are flipping the meeting room. Now, by this, what we ask folks to do is to watch a 2.5-minute video of where we have general orientation on what interference diagramming is and what are the major 5 steps that the participants will go through with the facilitator on the next day. Okay, then there's an actual sort of actual exercise, reality show, so to speak, where we actually go through the exercise. In this case, we use open records, Freedom of Information Act as the example, because so many entities, right, corporate, government, entities, nonprofit entities, have some sort of information answering network or node that addresses questions and requests, and then is able to fulfill those. Um, and so the goal here in this exercise is to for us to process open records requests, Freedom of Information Act requests quickly, accurately, and completely. And then we pull a group of together to go through this actual exercise. And it's a 32-minute video. It's on YouTube. You can see those and actually get a feel for the passion that these public servants have and how they are challenged by these obstacles within the workplace. And then you can get a sense of their brainstorming as the ideas come at the facilitator, which is me in the video, but they come at you like a mile in the minute, and you have to capture it, process it, put it at the right place on the board, and you get a good feel for that. It's fun. It's got a drama. It's got a plot, and it's got a logical conclusion. So you can bring popcorn and invite your family and friends as you watch it. And then now everyone is full kit. They have everything that they need to be able to come in the next day, ripped, roaring, and ready to go, to be able to participate in the interference diagram. And they don't even need to know that you're going to flip the meeting room and that you're going to move it also to, after the twist, you're going to move it into the goal tree, and they can start developing a goal tree for their organization. Here is how to find it. There's 2 ways to be able to find these if you want to flip the meeting room. And by the way, there's a lot of practitioners of government improvement that have been using this effectively, but it doesn't have to be government based, right? It just happens to be the example. But whatever you're working in could be very effective also. And so there's 2 ways to get there. One is through the ReEngine website that you can see there. And the second one is just Google interference diagramming video. And then this ugly mug will pop up, and then you know you're on the right video to watch. Again, a 2.5-minute video that's just an overview, and then a more in-depth 32-minute video. I encourage participants to watch both, because that way they can get a real sense of what they would like to bring to the meeting to be able to prepare and get ready for the exercise. And the amazing thing is they will prepare. They will come in charged up. That their mind will be racing ever since they see that video on YouTube. They'll be thinking about what they might want to say the next day, both in terms of challenges and in terms of ideas and solutions. And that's exactly what you want. There's a conviction that we have within ReEngine that the people who do the work are best positioned to be able to improve the work, that they see the work happening all the time, and they can come up with really insightful ways to improve those processes, to improve that work. And then when they see in a simulation exercise like the dice game or the bead game, when they see exercises like that, they see the importance and gain an appreciation for the constraint, then they really get to understand that their ideas targeted at the constraint will have a powerful and magnificent effect on their process and their organization. And another thing happens at this time, which is you break through those layers of resistance. You're able to break through the layers of resistance, and you're able to all of a sudden start to open up the possibility, the promise of successful change. One of the challenges, and you might have this in your organization, but certainly it's one of the challenges in government, is that there's this perception that, oh, this is just the flavor of the day. This is a passing fad. And if I just hold my breath, if I just keep my own confidence, that this too shall pass. And this thing that may or may not result in improvement, but certainly is not worth the effort. If I just hold my breath, it'll go past, and I can go on with my work and accomplish things the way that I've always done it. And so being able to overcome that point of resistance and being able for everyone in the room to see the potential for positive change, very powerful. And when it's their ideas that are being deployed, when it is their concepts or their neighbors' concepts that are being leveraged and then put together in a logical, reinforcing, supporting way that enables those critical success factors that everyone agrees on, that everyone recognizes, when they're able to put those together, then all of a sudden that goal becomes tenable. It becomes realistic. So the analogy that I like to use is imagine that you are climbing a mountain and that the challenges are those areas where it's sheer and there is no way to be able to get a foothold on those. So you're moving up the side of the mountain, but you don't have the right footholds to be able to move up. But those necessary conditions and critical success factors give you the footholds to be able to move over and across and through and bypass or eliminate those challenges on your way to the goal. And all of a sudden, the goal tree makes that possible for the whole team. Which is a wonderful thing to behold. Okay, so here with the interference diagram, in summary, you have this golden goose. And the golden goose, i.e. the interference diagram, can hatch the golden egg, which is your goal tree and the path to achievement within the organization, right? That shows you what you are going to change, what you are going to change to, and then also start to move towards how you're going to accomplish that change, right? What is your operational strategy to be able to accomplish that change? We often see leaders take their goal tree and whatever colors were part of it that just distinguished one entity from the other, they change it so that they can use traffic light symbols, colors really, to be able to evaluate how they're progressing along the tree. In other words, if things are progressing well, they color that entity, that necessary condition or critical success factor as green. If there is some delay or some challenge, then they color that entity as yellow. And if there's not progress, there's not sufficient progress, then they color it as red. You can see the parallel towards critical chain project management in terms of the use of those colors in order to track progress toward your objective and your goal. The next thing that you can do is, if it's already achieved and already done, like the necessary condition is satisfied to all of the participants, then you can actually color that blue. I call that blue ribbon. So you can see the blue and the green start to creep up from the bottom to the top of your goal tree as you use it as part of your operational strategy. And then you can also incorporate a bit of what Taiichi Ono would call Hoshikanren, or the enterprise strategy for the organization. And you can then play catchball. The idea is to take this single document of this goal tree and then have a conversation with folks in your organization, 2 or even 3 levels down from your whatever the leadership is that is conversing with the folks both below and above them. And it becomes a conversation tool, right? Where are they? Which necessary condition are they involved in within the organization? Do they see the path on this one-page diagram? Do they see the path to the objective? What are their contributions to it? Do they recognize that path? Have they had a conversation with their coworkers and their leadership about how they're getting towards that path? And that catchball back and forth confirms the strategy, is an opportunity to convey messaging within the organization. And the goal tree is a wonderful vehicle for that. Now, you've also got a tremendous amount of qualitative data. Now you really have a portrayal. It's almost like a Monet painting, where it's like pointillism, where we see challenge and we see the necessary conditions that need to be accomplished in order to overcome the challenge. We see those critical success factors lined up to be able to achieve our goal. And all of that is a qualitative data, a portrait of the organization, what it needs to do in order to be able to move forward. It's a wonderful complement to qualitative data, and it's a wonderful historical document also for the organization to go back to year after year, time after time, as they begin to progress and continue to improve. The process provides real solutions, but it's not a consultant in the back room with another consultant just poring over some sufficiency-based logic thinking tool product. It's something that happens live with the participants. It's something that that's a fun engagement. Folks get ownership and excitement of the process, which then melts away those layers of resistance. Behind me on my shelf is Kotter's book, the seminal book on change management, Leading Change. And one of the things that Kotter says is that we undersell the need for change, the burning platform, by a factor of 10, and sometimes by a factor of 100, because people have to realize their need for change if the change is going to become effective in the organization. And he goes through a litany of organizations that fail to do that and then fail to be able to be successful within their change. That level of communication, that saying what the change is and why we have to pursue the change again and again and again, is largely unnecessary when we're able to leverage interference diagramming and the goal tree, and then use it as a communication tool through the organization from top to bottom, to pin it into the break rooms, to put it into the hallways so that people can see and measure visually our process toward our goal, right? And again, it accelerates the understanding of the consultant and gives you all the more reason to be able to convey with legitimacy the need for change, and best of all, the goal tree. So I really, really, really want to hear from you. Hopefully we've been texting and chatting back and forth throughout the body of this, and I've been able to answer at least some of your questions, but I want to answer them all. So I'd like to invite you to chat with me following the presentation, and I'll be in the room for at least the next 20 minutes. If you have any questions, you can also go to the website, ReEngineConsulting.com, and check out some of the videos that are there. A lot of them are applicable whether or not you're in the realm of government improvement, and certainly feel free to use the interference diagramming videos. Thank you for your time today. It's been a real pleasure.